Alright guys, in this series of videos we are going to explore Angular unit testing. So let's go find the official Angular guide, Angular unit testing, and go straight in there. And here it is. So in these videos what we are going to do is go over the entire thing of all the things they are talking about here and explore every concept. Just try out some tests in the code, spin up our own application, and just explore really whatever this is talking about and learn all the aspects of unit testing in Angular. Alright, so let's get started with the setup as you would normally do. And what we need to do here, first of all, it says here it shows how to run tests in your application using ng test command. Now I know that before you can run that, you need to have excuse me, you need to have a working Angular application. So let's go generate one using Angular CLI. And here's the reference Angular CLI, and this is how you install it. Now I know that I already have it installed on my machine, so I don't need to run this command. How you can find out if you have it installed on your machine or not is by simply running ng command like this, and if it doesn't return an error saying that I don't recognize this command, that means you have it installed, or if it returns this kind of thing here. Alright, so now once you have the ng command installed, now I'm going to go into a temporary directory. Actually it doesn't exist here, so I'm going to create it, make a dir tmp, and then go into that tmp, and that's the directory I will use to keep my experimental new Angular application. So I need to generate one here. And how to do that exactly? Let's find the command. I guess that's the example. You just run ng new and then the name of your Angular app. So let's say ng new. Actually, let me double check here that you can still see this part of the screen since it'll be cut off. Oh, and I guess you couldn't really, huh? So let me expand this a little bit here. Like that. You should see that well now. Okay, ng new, and let's name our app. Let's say Angular unit testing, something like that. Have it generate the thing. Oh, it's asking, would you like to add Angular routing? Sure, why not? And then for CSS framework, I'd like to use less. That's a choice I like to make. And then it's spinning up this application. Let's go back to the browser for a second. So after I generate the app, I would go into the folder with the app, and I run ng serve to serve that app. This is still going, and then at the same time I'll be able to run ng tests as well. So let's just wait until it finishes. It should take another few seconds or so, and there you go, it's done. Now let's try ng serve. And is this going to... Oh yeah, that's right. You gotta go into the folder with the Angular app, and then from here you gotta do ng serve. I'm gonna break this window into two panes and go in this pane again into the app and run ng test at the same time with ng serve and see what happens. Alright, so the application is served. Let me try to open it in the browser. by accessing localhost 4200, and there it is. This is our newly generated application. And at the same time, you see the other browser window starts up, and that's the one that runs tests. And it ran, it says that it has 3 tests. Those are default tests that generated with the application by default. And here we have it. All right, so I'm going to go back to the testing guide here, and here we were able to run this ng test. All right, so we have our playground to explore and test things. So the first thing we're going to do is, let's see, this is a setup, some karma stuff. That's the exact screen, by the way, we see in our brand new app as running tests. Let's find something interesting here. So you can fine-tune the aspects of your test running by editing karma file. So let's find that file. I will open the newly generated application in VS Code, and you see I already ran out of open panes, so I'm going to create yet another pane here and go into the folder with the app and then open it in Visual Studio Code. Alright, and we're looking for karma file, and it should be in the root. Nope, not in the root, but in the source folder. Is it? Yes, there it is. And that's all the things that configure your unit tests. Anything interesting in here? Not sure, but that's where you would go to fine-tune your tests, to fine-tune some aspects about them. Now, let's see what else we got in here. Other test frameworks, setting up continuous integration. I don't think we care about that for now. We're just running things locally, not in Travis or Circle CI. Now, this point is about test coverage. Look, you can run this command with the code coverage parameter. I'm not sure what no watch is for, but let's try to run this and see what default code coverage comes up. So I canceled this current test run, and actually let me clear this screen like this and then run ng test with that code coverage flag and also no watch flag. So that's compiling the app. Let's see what happens. Okay, it starts up the usual test run in the browser. Let's keep watching the console. All right, that finished. And what no watch flag does, it stops the ng test command as soon as it finishes the first run. It doesn't continuously watches for files that you might edit and then rerun the tests. And the coverage flag shows, let me expand this pane here. So it looks like it evaluates whether how well your tests are covering your code of the application. So by default, obviously, there's not much code in there, and it looks like statements are covered here. You know what? Let me try to modify that a little bit. Let's see if it will catch my untested code if I add some. So I'm going to head straight up into, let's find app and then app HTML, not HTML, but the controller where I can write some tests, not tests, I'm sorry, where I can write some code that will introduce different branches for executing the code. And if I don't write tests that make those branches execute during tests, then the code coverage should say that, oh, some of my code is not covered by tests. So what I'm going to do here is to create, I'll just say method foo in this controller. And then in this method, I'm going to introduce 2 execution branches. I'm going to use if command, and it will use a parameter, something, let's say, my variable that will be passed in here, and then depending on the value, let's say value of my variable, we are going execute either, let's say this method will return either value 1, or now we're adding the second branch of execution here, and then copy this, and let's say it will return value 2. Now this is highlighted for some reason. Let's see why. Misplaced else. I guess current TS-lint conventions say that you gotta write it like this. All right, highlight disappeared. And if I save these changes and now go to the test coverage command and run it, let's see what happens. It takes a minute. So what I expect here is that some of these numbers, some of these coverage evaluations will show not 100% because I just added code, but I didn't add any tests that make sure that code is executed and tested for whatever the behavior it expands. And there you go. All right, that coverage thing actually works. It detected that I added 2 code branches. Remember that if statement has the main execution branch and then the second execution branch. So it detected that there are 2 now, and none of those are covered with tests, and that's 0. That's awesome. I love it. All right, now, excuse me, that was a code coverage thing, and looks like you can enforce code coverage with saying that there are thresholds. And for example, statements, you need to cover 80% of your statements with tests or branches. You know what? I'm really curious to try it out. So if I add this code coverage enforcements, what's going to happen? For example, let's see what it says here. To enable this, open Karma test platform configuration and add this. So it doesn't actually says what happens if your code violates those things that you set. So let's try it out. You need to edit your Karma file, and then you edit this property, coverage Istanbul reporter. All right, here we are going to set thresholds. All right, let me copy this and paste that here. And then I'll just try with branches. All right, now it's enforcing 80% of code branches to be covered by tests. And what happens if they're not? Let's try to run the test again. So here, when I executed this ng command, it exited with status code 0 according to Linux command line statuses, and that means the command executed successfully. So I suspect it might exit with code 1 indicating that the command failed, and that this will be your sort of a way to run it on Travis or Circle CI, whatever, and then if your code coverage doesn't meet the standard that you set, then the command will fail, and therefore your build in Travis or Circle CI or whatever will fail as well. And that's how you can integrate that with continuous integration. Now, it actually doesn't clearly highlight my guess about whether the command exited with 0 or 1. So I can find out if I Google last command status in bash, let's say. And then if I just click on the first result here, just show me example. Is that how I do it, maybe? No? Oh, I run echo of this variable here, of this parameter. Okay, yeah, and this is not 0. This is some other code for exiting command. If it's not 0, that means the command failed. To confirm this experiment, let's delete this part now and run the test again and see what happens. Okay, that finished, and if I check the last command status, there you go, it shows 0. That means this command succeeded according to the operating system settings. Not settings, but the way how commands are executed in Unix-like operating systems. If it exits with 0, that means command succeeded, and it will not fail your build. All right, that's very cool. Let's see what's next in the guide. Let me close these windows. All right, now it starts talking about different Angular paradigms of testing different parts of Angular. So remember, Angular has services, it has components, directives, pipes, and all those things. So it starts talking about things that are the easiest to test. And first, it is about testing services without any of the dependency injection mocking. Here they show an example of how to test a service. For example, where's the service? That's one service, right? So they are instantiating this service without worrying about any of the dependency injection that needs to happen here, because they assume that the service doesn't have any dependencies to inject. So in the test, you don't need to worry about it. In my experience, this is never the case. This example is pretty much useless for any kind of real-world application. When it comes to using services in Angular in the application that has, I don't know, more than 10 components or like more than 2 routing pages, there's always some stuff going on where different services depend on each other, and you need to inject one service into another. And when you do that, you need to deal with dependency injection and mocking things when you're injecting into it. So you have to have a test bed with the provider statement. And here, this is not yet shows that. This example shows that you can sort of simulate dependency injection by simply injecting these services into the constructor of whatever service you're testing. So for example, this master service needs value service to be injected inside of it, and here they do it manually. Here they do it almost what Angular does under the hood, but this is very rigid. You can't use the native dependency injection system to mock things more easily. And if you scroll down to the next example where they say to use the test bed, here you can actually inject things using test bed where you specify providers. And so here you're testing this, what is it, master service? Is that for... Okay, no, here you're still using value service, but then if value service depends on something, you can inject that thing in there and mock it as well. So let's... Oh, there you go. Here's an example of where they have 2 services, one depends on another, and let's have a go at this. Let's try it out, but we'll do that in the next video.